Today was day number 2 of walking tours that we're doing in conjunction with the Chicago Public Library for Polish American Heritage Month. We're going to check out overlooked and not so overlooked landmarks here of Polish Chicago in the West Town area. I hope you enjoyed the tour. Happy to bring everyone into this wonderful tour. Now we're going to be heading that way, but before we do, take a look right over there at 1612 West Chicago. That was the Alvin Theater, one of many such theaters that you had here in Chicago. It was originally built for the Lynch Circuit and later was part of the Balaban and Katz chain. So Chicago is replete with buildings that people would call Polish cathedrals. Right here, this church is actually definitely one of them in terms of its style, its design, but more overlooked when it comes to some of the more well-known Polish churches, whether it's St. Hyacinth Basilica, St. Adalbert's, which is currently under threat, St. Stanislaus Kostka, the mother of all Polish churches, St. Mary the Angels, which guests that were on our tour yesterday got to go inside. One of the interesting things maybe I should start with is on the front, we see it says Kościół Świętych Młodzianków, Holy Innocents in Polish, and there's something that's very archaic in the Polish designations for Polish neighborhoods here in Chicago. So when we think of our neighborhoods, right, we think of places like, let's say, Portage Park or Garfield Park. These are neighborhoods which derive their names because the park was what brought the community together. For the Polish community, whether it's Jackowo, Wojciechowo, Stanisławowo, and the like, it comes back to the names of these churches where in a very archaic Polish, and so people that come here are like, oh, this sounds very quaint, right? The fact that you would call this area around the Holy Innocents from Kościół Świętych Młodzianków as Młodziankowo. Think of it as like calling it Innocenceville, right? And these different areas, right, with Ville at the end, where it's like, oh, wow, that's really quaint, although we have a lot of place names here today, but very archaic sounding in Polish. I mentioned Polish cathedrals. This is not a cathedral. Neither are any of the churches, nor 95% of these churches, which people will call Polish cathedrals. So why is it, whether you're in St. Louis, whether you're in Detroit, Buffalo, Chicopee, Massachusetts, St. Louis, that people call them Polish cathedrals? It's just a colloquialism. Most likely, folks would see these churches and they're like, wow, so grand. You'll actually have testimonies from many of the bishops that consecrated these churches all over the United States that they were astounded that the Polish community built these churches. In fact, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you can actually see the old Chicago Customs House and Post Office that was built immediately after the Great Chicago Fire, where literally after it was dismantled, that building, very grand, but unfortunately built in a rush. The engineering was bad, and so it had to be within less than 2 decades taken apart. And so an enterprising Polish pastor hears about this, has it loaded onto different rail cars, and literally rebuilt like Lego blocks as a grand Polish sacred edifice opposite Kościuszko Park in south side of Milwaukee. Although the current church was built in 1904, St. Boniface was originally established for German immigrants on the same site in 1865. Only 6 years later, St. Boniface found itself playing an integral role in one of Chicago's watershed moments in history, providing meals and housing for the masses that were displaced after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. By the way, sure, Chicago is the community that's most well known as the heart of American Polonia, and because of it, people think that Illinois has a sizable Polish-American population, but Wisconsin, by percentage, actually has more, 10.7%. The creation of this park, in part, was a desperate bid by the German pastor at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, as the neighborhood was becoming this part, right? So the part that was north of the division had been Polish for a long time, but as the numbers increased, this area became increasingly Polish, right? Same with St. Boniface. Became more and more of a Polish church. In fact, through most of the first half of the 20th century, this was a Polish parish. And remember, these were areas that were incredibly densely populated, right? So that's one of the reasons why these parks were such beautiful amenities. Before we talk any more about the museum, of course, for myself as a commissioner of the Water Reclamation District, I always take a lot of pride in making people aware of ways that we try to manage our stormwater. So you see right there, that little element? Any idea of what that's about? That's right, storing stormwater, right? Chicago was built on what? A swamp. Where did skyscrapers come from?
Landfill.
Chicago. Why? Because on this swamp it was so expensive to build. For most of human history, people built buildings. Why? But it was so expensive to build on the swampland that Chicagoans built it up.